Unpacking Marx's narrative, a critical exploration. Karl Marx remains one of the most influential thinkers of modern history. His work has shaped not only academic discourse, but also social and political movements worldwide. Whether celebrated as a revolutionary or critiqued for his polemical position against capitalism, Marx's narrative continues to inspire debate. This video explores his ideas through an analytical lens, focusing on their historical relevance, theoretical frameworks, and their application to interpreting today's socio-economic landscape. By critically engaging with core concepts from his work, we aim to unpack Marx's narrative and examine its resonance in the 21st century. To understand Marx's theories, it is essential to situate him in his historical context. The 19th century was marked by the rapid expansion of industrial capitalism, driven by the Industrial Revolution. For the first time, large-scale factories, mechanized production, and urbanization fundamentally transformed the way societies produced and consumed goods. However, these changes also exacerbated socio-economic inequalities. Wealth became concentrated in the hands of industrial capitalists, or the bourgeoisie, while working-class individuals, the proletariat, endured harsh conditions in factories, often toiling under exploitative systems of labor. Marx's intellectual development was shaped by these realities. Born in 1818 in Trier, Germany, he witnessed the spread of capitalist forces across Europe. Influenced by German philosophy, English political economics, and French revolutionary ideas, Marx's critique of capitalism began to take shape. His life as a political activist, journalist, and thinker was a response to the inequalities and contradictions he observed in this system, inspiring him to propose a radically different understanding of history and society. Central to Marx's thought are two interlinked frameworks: historical materialism and dialectical materialism. These theoretical tools form the cornerstone of his analysis of society. Historical materialism argues that all societal structures, values, and ideologies arise from material conditions, specifically the modes of production and economic systems. According to Marx, societal evolution is not driven by ideas or abstract morality, but by changes in these material conditions. For instance, the transition from feudalism to capitalism was facilitated by the rise of new production forms that undermined the old feudal order. Dialectical materialism adds another layer, describing history as a process shaped by contradictions and conflicts. Marx borrowed heavily from Hegel's dialectical philosophy, which sees progress as the result of tension between opposing forces. For Marx, however, these forces were material, not abstract. The contradictions within economic systems naturally give rise to class struggle, an engine of change that propels societies forward. Together, historical and dialectical materialism provide a framework for understanding the economic base of society, the means and relations of production, and how it interacts with the superstructure, law, culture, politics, and ideology. Marx's critique of capitalism is best understood through key concepts he developed to explain its inner workings and contradictions. These ideas remain foundational to his broader narrative. Marx famously noted in the Communist Manifesto, "The history of all hitherto existing societies is the history of class struggle." This assertion publicly anchors his entire theory. Marx believed that throughout history, society has organized itself around hierarchical class structures. In capitalism, the bourgeoisie, who own the means of production, exploit the proletariat, who only own their labor. For Marx, this conflict was not incidental, but systemic. Capitalism, he argued, thrives on inequality. The unequal relationship between these classes is what generates wealth for one at the expense of the other. This antagonism, he insisted, was inherent in capitalism and would eventually lead to revolutionary change. Another critical concept in Marx's critique is alienation. In his economic and philosophical manuscripts, Marx elaborated on how workers under capitalism become alienated in 4 specific ways. First, they are alienated from the products of their labor, as the goods they create are owned and sold by others. Second, workers are alienated from the process of labor itself, reduced to repetitive mechanical functions rather than fulfilling creative work. Third, they are alienated from their own humanity, as they are treated as mere cogs in the capitalist machine. Finally, they are alienated from others as competition pits individuals against one another in the labor market. Marx saw this estrangement as a profound indictment of capitalism, which he believed robbed humans of their potential to connect meaningfully to their labor and society. At the heart of Marx's economic critique is the concept of surplus value, an insight central to his analysis of capitalist exploitation. Marx argued that all value originates from labor. However, in a capitalist system, workers receive wages that are less than the value they produce. The surplus value created by their labor is captured by capitalists as profit. In Marx's view, this extraction of surplus value is an exploitative process where the laborer's effort enriches the bourgeoisie. Marx also recognized that capitalism had revolutionary qualities. Its ability to transform production, propel technological progress, and expand markets was unprecedented. However, he argued that capitalism's growth was its own undoing. The system's reliance on profit leads to overproduction, market crashes, and crises, ultimately destabilizing the very foundation of the economy. These crises, coupled with the increasing immiseration of workers, would, Marx predicted, trigger a proletarian revolution. A major component of Marx's narrative is his vision for the future, a society free from the inequalities and exploitation endemic to capitalism. Marx believed that the systemic contradictions and conflicts within capitalism would lead to its demise. The proletariat, recognizing their oppression, would seize the means of production through revolution and dismantle the capitalist system. This would usher in socialism, an intermediary phase where collective control would replace private ownership. Eventually, Marx envisioned the emergence of a classless, stateless society, communism, where individuals could realize their full creative and productive potentials without constraints imposed by profit-driven motives. However, it is worth noting that Marx's description of communism remains vague, reflecting his conviction that a post-capitalist society would emerge organically rather than conforming to a rigid blueprint. Two of Marx's works serve as cornerstones for his narrative, the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital. Each contributes uniquely to his critique and vision. Co-authored with Friedrich Engels in 1848, the Communist Manifesto is a call to action designed to rally workers to unite against capitalist oppression. Its accessible prose outlines Marx's theories of class struggle and revolution, casting capitalism as a transient phase in human history. Though concise, the manifesto distills the urgency of Marx's message, building momentum for social movements worldwide. If the Communist Manifesto is the rallying cry, Das Kapital is the analytical cornerstone of Marx's critique. This extensive work dissects the mechanisms of capitalism, providing an in-depth exploration of commodities, labor theory of value, and capital accumulation. While dense and academic, Das Kapital is where Marx makes his most rigorous argument for understanding the exploitative essence of capitalism. Marx's narrative has not been without criticism. Scholars and economists have questioned the deterministic nature of his theories, arguing that human agency and cultural factors play significant roles in societal development. Others challenge the feasibility of a classless society and the risks of authoritarianism in implementing communist principles, as seen in historical attempts inspired by Marx's ideas. Despite these critiques, Marx's analysis of capitalism remains strikingly relevant in addressing modern issues. With the rise of wealth inequality, precarious labor conditions, automation, and corporate influence on global politics, many of Marx's concerns are echoed in contemporary debates. Concepts like alienation resonate in today's gig economy, where individuals often feel disconnected from their work's purpose. Additionally, Marx's analysis is increasingly applied to discussions of global capitalism, addressing power imbalances in multinational supply chains, environmental degradation, and neo-colonial economic structures. While historical attempts to implement Marxian principles have faced challenges, his critique of unchecked capitalism remains a compelling lens for understanding injustice. Engaging with Marx's narrative requires nuance. Rather than adopting or rejecting his ideas wholesale, it is crucial to examine them critically. What lessons can we draw from his critique as we confront modern challenges? Are there overlooked insights that could inform solutions to global inequality? At the same time, it is necessary to recognize that Marx's theories were grounded in 19th century conditions. In applying his ideas today, we must adapt them to account for complexities he could not have foreseen, such as advances in technology, environmental crises, and global interdependence. Ultimately, Marx's narrative is best understood not as a rigid doctrine, but as a powerful framework for questioning the status quo. By analyzing his ideas critically, we can explore what remains relevant and what may require reinterpretation in the pursuit of a more equitable society. In conclusion, Karl Marx's narrative invites us to confront uncomfortable truths about inequality, power, and exploitation, while inspiring us to rethink possibilities for progress. It is a challenge to reflect critically on the systems shaping our world, and to imagine a future where justice and human potential are prioritized above profit. Karl Marx, architect of modern social and political theory. Karl Marx, 1882-1883, was a German philosopher, economist, sociologist, and revolutionary who had a profound influence on modern social science and political theory. His thought focused primarily on the critique of capitalism and the formation of the foundations of socialist and communist theory. Marx was born in Trier, Germany in 1818. He studied law and philosophy at the universities of Bonn and Berlin and was particularly influenced by the philosophy of Hegel. One of his early works, the Economic and Philosophical Manuscripts, offered profound insights into the nature of man and social relations. One of Marx's most famous works is the Communist Manifesto, 1848. This book, co-written with Friedrich Engels, emphasizes the class struggle in capitalist society and argues for the transition to a socialist society through a revolution by the proletariat, working class. Through the concept of historical materialism, Marx explained the driving force of historical development as changes in economic conditions and productive forces. His other major work, Capital, 1867, is a massive work that analyzes the structure and functioning of the capitalist economy. Marx argued that capitalism is based on exploitative relations between workers and capitalists, which lead to inequality and social conflict. He predicted that the contradictions of capitalism would eventually lead to the collapse of the capitalist system. Marx's ideas influenced several socialist movements and revolutions throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries. His theories played a significant role in historical events such as the Russian Revolution 1917 and later led to the establishment of Marxism as a political ideology in several countries. Marx's ideas were not limited to economic analysis alone, but had a profound impact on society, politics, and culture in general. His theories form the basis of modern social science and are still studied and discussed by many scholars and thinkers. Marx is remembered as a thinker who pursued human liberation and social justice through criticism of capitalism. Marx's Capital is an important work that analyzes the capitalist economic system and contains several key concepts. Here are some of them. Commodities and money. Marx explains commodities by dividing them into use value and exchange value. Use value refers to the utility that a commodity provides, and exchange value refers to the value that appears in exchange for other commodities. Capital. Capital is a resource used to purchase labor power and produce commodities to create profit. Marx argues that capital should be understood not only as a simple material resource, but also as a social relationship. Surplus value. Surplus value refers to the difference between the value produced by workers and the wages they receive. Marx explains that capitalists make profits by exploiting surplus value from workers. Class struggle. Marx argues that in capitalist society, the conflict between the capitalist class and the working class is the main driving force behind the development of society. This conflict brings about economic, political, and social changes. Concentration and centralization of capital. Marx analyzed that as capitalism developed, capital became concentrated in the hands of a small number of capitalists, which deepened economic inequality. Historical materialism. Marx argued that historical development was determined by economic foundations and explained that all changes in society were influenced by material conditions. These concepts formed the basis of Marx's economic theory and social criticism and had a great influence on modern social science and political economy. Karl Marx explained that class struggle was a very important concept in capitalist society. According to his theory, society was basically divided into two main classes: capitalists, bourgeoisie, and workers, proletariat. Marx argued that as capitalism developed, the conflict between these two classes intensified. Formation of classes. Marx explained that as capitalism developed, the capitalist class came to own the means of production, and workers were forced to sell their labor power in order to survive. This led to conflicts of interest between the two classes. The nature of conflict. Capitalists try to pay workers as little wages as possible to maximize profits, while workers demand better wages and working conditions in order to survive. This conflict is an essential characteristic of capitalist society, and Marx called it class struggle. Historical development. Marx argued that all societies have developed historically through class struggle. He predicted that this struggle would eventually lead to social change, and that even in capitalist society, the working class would unite and fight against the capitalist class. Possibility of revolution. Marx believed that as class struggle intensified, the possibility of the working class carrying out a revolution against the capitalist class increased. He believed that this revolution would be the path to socialism beyond capitalism. In conclusion, for Marx, class struggle is an essential element in understanding the structure and development of capitalist society, and it can be said to act as a driving force for social change. Marx used historical materialism and class analysis to analyze the impact of class struggle on the structure and economy of society. His argument can be summarized in the following main elements. Historical materialism. Marx believed that historical development was determined by economic foundations. That is, ownership of the means of production and relations of production formed the structure and classes of society, which in turn influenced political, legal, and cultural institutions. The concept of class. Marx divided society into two main opposing classes: capitalists, bourgeoisie, and workers, proletariat. Capitalists owned the means of production and sought profit, while workers sold their labor power to make a living. The interests of these two classes were inherently antagonistic. Class struggle. Marx believed that class struggle was the driving force behind social change. Conflicts between capitalists and workers deepened economic inequality, which could eventually lead to social unrest and revolution. He argued that historically, these struggles had driven social development. Changes in economic structure. Marx believed that as capitalism developed, the working class became increasingly exploited, which in turn led to increased tensions between classes. These tensions would eventually expose the contradictions of the capitalist system, and as the consciousness of the working class grew, they would trigger revolutionary change. Resulting changes. Marx predicted that class struggle would ultimately overthrow the capitalist system and open the way to socialism through the dictatorship of the proletariat. This is explained as a process that aims for social ownership of the means of production and a classless society. This analysis by Marx had a great influence on various fields such as modern social science, political economy, and sociology. In addition to the capitalist economic system, Marx focused on several other social systems. His analysis was mainly based on the perspective of historical development and class struggle, and included the following social systems. Primitive communism. Marx believed that the early human society was in the form of primitive communism. In this period, the means of production were owned in common, and there was no concept of individual ownership. Resources and products were shared within the community, and there were no classes. Ancient slavery. Slavery existed in ancient societies. In this system, slaves were used as means of production, and the relationship between master and slave was a form of economic exploitation. Marx analyzed that the economic structure of ancient society caused conflicts between classes. Feudalism. Feudalism was a social system that was dominant in medieval Europe and was characterized by the relationship between landowners, nobles, and peasants, serfs. The nobles owned the land and entrusted the peasants with farming, and the peasants provided taxes or labor to the nobles. Marx believed that feudalism played an important role in the transition to capitalism. Socialism. Marx argued that as the contradictions of capitalism deepened, a transition to socialism was necessary. Socialism is a system that pursues social ownership of the means of production and equality of distribution, and aims for a classless society. Marx believed that socialism would be realized through the proletarian revolution. Communism. Marx's ultimate goal was the realization of a communist society. This is a society in which classes disappear, the means of production are jointly owned, and resources are distributed to each person according to their needs. Marx believed that communism was the final stage of human development. Through these various social systems, Marx analyzed the development process of human society and explored how each system formed economic and social relationships.